Hey everybody, Ryan with Spotter Staffing, and I'm heading to Algonquin to meet to meet with Dr. John Burkey, who was the former superintendent of the Huntley School District and now runs an amazing organization that Spotter is so proud to be a part of in the LUDA, the Large Unit District Association. Picked up some Joe's Donuts on my way. Donuts and Directors, episode 5 or 6. I really need to figure that out. Coming up next. All right, you guys can't see me, but this is Donuts and Directors, episode 6. I'm with Dr. John Burkey. Thank you so much for doing this, Dr. Burkey.
Hey, Ryan, great to see you.
Okay, if I call you John, I usually call you John.
That would be great.
Okay, all right, perfect. Well, thanks for doing this. We got this awesome room out here in Algonquin at the public library. Got this set up for us. I always started off by saying we've got donuts, we've got a director. We do have that this time. On my last two, they haven't allowed me to bring donuts, which is just sad to me. These amazing donuts. So Dr. Burkey, or John, is letting me bring donuts. So we have those to enjoy. And really, we're just going to kick it off and ask some questions about you and your profession and all that stuff.
Before we get to questions, I think
you're going to
deal with the important part here.
We should, right?
So you brought this from
Joe's Donut. Yeah, and this is in Niles. This place is delicious.
We got some Christmas donuts going on.
I did go with the holiday theme for you. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
They asked me what do you want. I said, give me some holiday ones, but I don't know if you like strawberry, but that strawberry glazed one is my favorite, and it is amazing. So,
Ryan, that's why when you said donuts, I said yes.
I was in?
I said, well,
nice.
Yes.
Nice. I love
that's
it.
all you had to say, donuts.
Perfect. I love it. All right, so we are good. We got the donuts. Tell me a little bit about, I know you're from Central Illinois, which we have that in common, although they don't really claim the Quad Cities of Central Illinois. We don't get wrapped into there. But
right.
You're from Central Illinois. Tell me, start there, and kind of how you got into education, and I know you're a U of I guy, so just kind of walk me through high level how you got into it.
So I'm from the 309 area code.
Yeah,
that's how I describe it.
Yeah,
that's how I describe it.
Which is really large.
It's very large. It goes you used to go from most of the width of the state. It doesn't anymore. But from the 309 area code, I actually still have a 309 cell number.
You do.
And it's my tie back to Central Illinois. I'll never give that up. So I grew up in the Peoria area, a few different places around Peoria, and lived there my whole life. And then, like you said, I went away to U of I, so a little farther east, but still Central Illinois, and spent a lot of time in Champaign, and I really like Champaign.
And they pick up 217 though, don't they?
They do. You're out of the 309. You're out of the 309 zone there. Yeah. So went to Champaign and actually did all my degrees at U of I. So I've got 3 degrees from U of I. Awesome. So I've spent a lot of time and a lot of money there.
Yeah.
And but a great university, and
so
really like to really enjoy that community.
Awesome. Now I have to ask. So my brother is a U of I graduate and a huge alumni supporter. Your guys' basketball team, football team. Let's just move past it, right? Basketball though, pretty legit. Right now.
Depending on the game.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's been some good games this year so far, and there's been some that haven't gone so well. So. I think it's still a wait and see.
A wait and see.
Football's just really frustrating.
Yeah.
It just has been a frustration for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's been a real struggle. I was actually an undergrad during the Flying Illini.
Oh, were you?
In
I
the
didn't
late
know that.
80s. And
is that Nick Anderson and those guys? Okay, yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. We went to all the home games.
So you're like an Orange Crush guy.
I was down in the Orange Crush during the home games, and
awesome.
It was a really exciting time to be an Illini basketball.
Sure is. That's awesome.
Basketball fan. Yep.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's when my brother was. I think my brother was there right around the same time, but I don't remember when. So
so interesting. Dick Vitale, who's still of course, and just been in the news, dealing with an illness, and he actually made a bet. I think it was in '89. He made a bet that if Illinois ever got ranked number 1 that year, and Dick Vitale's always been in Illinois. He's always been deferential to Illinois. And he said, "I will stand on my head in the center of the court at Assembly Hall." And Illinois did get to number 1 that year,
and he did. Awesome.
It was when he was there for ESPN, and he stood on his head. They held him up and on the center of the court. So
there you go. That's awesome. We could have an interview now. That's amazing. I loved my brother loved those times during watching the basketball team, but they are going to get there. I think that's a really good trend for them. Underwood's good. I think they're going to be good.
You know, what's really changed for us is recruiting. We used to have a pipeline into the city of Chicago, and that just dissipated, and there's just been it's just been a much tougher road in recruiting in the last really 20 years. So but we got to get that back.
Cool. Well, awesome. Well, we know you're a guy. I love that because you're a local guy here. Tell me then. So, did you always know you wanted to go into education administration? When did you figure that out?
Yeah, I did. So I was a little strange. I was a kid who knew he wanted to be a principal.
Awesome.
So most kids don't say I want to be a principal. But, I knew that probably.
Is it because you spent time with the principal?
Probably did. Yeah, probably did when I was in middle school. I knew that, and you know the reason was it was twofold. One, I'm like a really naturally curious person. Like I want to know how things work.
Yeah.
And so when I was a student, I was always intrigued by all of the kind of the mechanics of school and how everything works, from scheduling to everything. And so I did always talk to my administrators because I was genuinely curious about why do you do this? Why does this happen? And so I did, you know, all the way back even to elementary school, know my principals pretty well and talk to them. And so that was one of the things that always interested me. A second was, and I'm a little different than some educators, but I didn't like school, and particularly didn't like high school.
Okay.
And I was bored to death. And it wasn't because I was like gifted bored. It was because it was boring.
Yeah.
And really just, you know, I liked the social part. I liked the out of class stuff. But sitting in class for 7 hours a day, and the way my teachers taught when I was in high school was, and it was a chalkboard then, and it was actually a chalkboard.
Sure.
And they would write notes on the chalkboard. The student would have a notebook, and you would handwrite what the teacher was writing on the chalkboard. It was all about rote memorization. And it was really, I'm like, this has got to be different, because I loved some of the subjects in school.
Sure.
It wasn't that I didn't like the content, it was the way it got delivered. And I'm a history guy. That was my major in college. And my U.S. history class, I'll still remember that the teacher was close to retirement, very nice guy.
Yeah.
He had blackboards on 3 sides of the room. And I'm a junior in high school. I still remember this. 3 sides of the room. And he would start at the beginning of class on one, and he would walk around and literally handwrite notes.
Wow.
And then we would copy them down. He would then go back to board one and erase it and do it. And he did this every hour.
And he would get every 3 boards?
Every hour.
Oh, wow.
I mean, his job couldn't have been very interesting. So,
and he had to be covered in chalk.
So one, you remember remember the erasers? You'd pound them on the chalkboard.
I asked my wife this the other day. Do you remember to learn handwriting? They had where you put the 5 pieces of chalk in the wire and it drug it across the board and made the lines. Yeah, I remember that. I was like,
I failed handwriting, by the way.
My handwriting is still terrible.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
So here's the story with that is so one day, about halfway through the class, this is like in April, and we were studying World War II. And one day, and his name was Mr. Anderson, so I remember very well. He went and he sat on the front of his desk, like literally sat on his desk. He never did that.
Yeah.
And so it was a little more like, hey, I'm just going to talk with you now. No blackboard. And he started talking to us about World War II, and he was in Europe during World War II. Oh, wow. And for 20-25 minutes, I'm like, this is the best discussion we've ever had. We have a history teacher who lived through this.
It's part of history.
We never knew it.
Yeah.
And my takeaway from that was, and it was so impactful for me, because I'm like, I wish he would have done that every day.
Yeah.
It's like this guy had incredible stories to share, but really through no fault of his own, he had been taught this is the way you have to teach.
Yeah.
And he was teaching the way teaching was done. And so from all of those experiences, from that U.S. history class to my other classes, I'm like, I want to make school different. And that really is what's driven me. I was a middle school history teacher myself, and I tried to make my class be very different and modeled after things the way I thought.
Where'd you do that? Where were you a middle school teacher at?
Actually, so you had to go there. So actually, It was a little town somewhat near Champaign called Hoopeston.
Okay, I know Hoopeston. My wife's from down there.
Yeah, and the reason I say you had to go there is then I got to tell you what our mascot was. We were the Corn Jerkers.
All right.
So one of the most unique mascots in Illinois. But
Fisher's also down there, and that's a very unique one.
It is. Yeah. The Corn Jerkers, and there's actually a mascot that is the mascot's called Jerky, and it's an ear of corn with a mascot coming out of it because it's a big farming community and corn and detasseling.
I would say, does that come from detasseling?
Yeah, that's where the term comes
I've done that
from.
before, which is a terrible job, but
that's where the term comes from.
Gotcha.
So taught there, and I started my master's right away because, as I said, I knew I wanted to be a principal. I really enjoyed teaching, enjoyed kids. I actually loved middle school. And teachers pretty much either really like middle school or they really don't.
Yeah.
And I was in the camp that really did.
Yeah.
So actually, principalship came open right after I got my master's in my building. And so I applied for it, and I became the principal in the building where I taught. And I was 27 years old when I got hired.
Wow.
So I was really young. In fact, I was younger, I think, by about 10 years than any teacher in the building.
Wow.
And so that was a unique situation to be this young guy who's now the principal. But it was a great experience. And I did that for 4 years in that building. I then went back to the Peoria area to a district, Dunlap, which is a sort of a suburban now.
And was this a principal role too, or?
Yeah, I went as a middle school principal.
Gotcha.
Actually got to open a brand new building, which
Awesome.
was one of the things in my career which I really enjoyed. Got to open a brand new middle school and go through that whole process of moving from an old building into this new building. Got to make a lot of the decisions about what we were going to do. And that was Dunlap's a wonderful district. Just had I was a principal there for 4 years.
Gotcha.
And we actually, one of the unique things we did in this new building was we were the first in the area was we got laptops.
Big deal.
Laptop carts for our students and Wi-Fi. I mean, this was at the infancy of Wi-Fi, of all this. And so we actually had these laptop carts where teachers could bring them in and give every student his or her own laptop and work. And so, without getting a lot into that, we learned a lot from that. I mean, a lot of that didn't go well.
Right, sure.
But I learned a ton from kind of being an early innovator in technology that way. So did that for 4 years, and then went to the central office in Dunlap as a assistant superintendent.
Gotcha.
And then after that, came to Huntley as the superintendent.
Gotcha. So did you know at 27 when you took your first principal job, which is amazing?
Yep.
This is where I want to be. Like I know you said you knew younger you want to be a principal.
Yeah,
but did you know I never want to teach again?
Yeah, I never had a goal to be a superintendent actually. And
really?
What happened was, I'm somebody who I get bored pretty easily in that I got to have new challenges. I got to have something new going on in the job. And so after being a principal for 8 years, I'm like, I gotta do something. I'm so young. I'm like, I just don't see myself doing this for the next 25 years. So that was what I'm like, okay, what's next? And then it was an assistant superintendent. I'm like, wow, I can really do this. And had a lot of good mentors along the way. I mean, I worked for some really good people that helped me learn along my career. And then the Huntley position came open, and Huntley is really about Dunlap, just
different location.
Very similar, just bigger, fast-growing district. And so I think was the right fit at the right time.
Yeah.
And we moved up here. It was the first time I ever lived in the suburbs, and I ended up being there for 12 years, and it was a phenomenal district.
How big was Huntley when you came?
We were about 7,000 students, and it's about 9,000 something today.
So it's not crazy big.
No, most of the crazy growth happened in the 5 years before I came.
Gotcha.
So we were still growing, but it was really slowed down. Two years after I came was the Great Recession.
Well, and then you did.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Building, construction completely stopped.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask.
That was really what stopped the growth in Huntley. And Huntley's actually growing again. Yeah. But it completely stopped because of that.
Gotcha. So did you opened up a new building in Dunlap? Did you do that in Huntley as well? Because these are new buildings here.
So actually, no.
You didn't? Okay.
All of the buildings all of the Square Barn campus buildings, which are the newest ones, opened actually the year before I came.
Gotcha.
So they had just opened. I was involved when I was in Huntley in a $35 million addition to our high school.
Cool.
So we did a huge addition and renovation of our high school.
It's huge.
Which was which was really exciting because the original Huntley High School was built. There were 300 students in it when it opened.
Yeah.
When I left, there were 3,000. So that's how much. So the building actually had to be added on to a number of times. But we did what, at least as of now, is the final big addition, and it was really exciting to be a part of that. And we really. When I say it was a renovation too, it was a new building. It was opened in '97, so it wasn't that it was old, but the infrastructure needed to be updated for the number of students. But we really updated it to truly help us deliver 21st century instruction back to why I got into education in the first place.
Exactly.
And we started a huge...
And there's no laptop carts, I'm assuming, there.
We started a huge blended learning program in our high school, which was the first of its kind, and it is very successful. It allows a lot of flexibility for kids. Again, it's giving kids the education. I sat in those classrooms and go, why am I writing all this stuff off a chalkboard?
Right.
We were able to change those things. We were also, in the time that I was there, we were the largest totally K-12 one-to-one district in Illinois. We were an early adopter of one-to-one.
Yeah.
We started in 2012, and that was a really great project to be a part of. And consequently, when the pandemic came, Huntley was situated in a really good place to go to online learning because other districts were able to do it, but the one-to-one was newer to them, and they were still learning it. Well, Huntley, they were already 4 or 5 years into it.
They got it,
And so it really made that transition a lot smoother because, again, we'd been an early adopter.
That's really cool. So you're not the only one in your family who is in education. Your wife is also in education, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Where's she at?
Yeah, she's a lot better. She's a lot better at it than I am. So
has she always been in education as well?
Actually, no. She went to college to be a medical doctor.
Oh, okay.
And was a chemistry major, which is ironic because I didn't even
that's tough.
Like high school chemistry. I didn't want any part of that. So chemistry is not my thing. But she was a chemistry major and ended up deciding not to become a medical doctor and then went back right after and got her teaching certificate.
Gotcha.
So she started a little bit later. But when we came up here, we had our kids at that time, so she didn't work for a while our kids were really young, and then she went back and was a teacher in District 300, and she just has really had great success. She became an assistant principal, became a principal, and then is now one of the HR directors in the central office.
Awesome.
So she is in charge of, I believe her title is recruiting, and she works specifically with that part of working for the assistant superintendent of HR. In reality, she's in charge of COVID right now, as so many of our administrators are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unfortunately
they just manage that.
Well, it's unfortunately what so many people are having to do right now.
I'm sure. So I'm sure you're sad that you've missed this part of it not being at Huntley anymore. Let's go.
Yeah, my timing was good. LUDA came along.
It was great. Yeah.
LUDA came along. Yeah. The LUDA job came along, and it was one of those where I actually pretty much planned that I would just retire from Huntley.
Okay.
I had a great board, and it was just it was a really good environment. But LUDA came along. It allowed me to be able to. I still live in Huntley. My kids are still in school, and so. LUDA was just the right thing at the right time, and again, it's been that next challenge. I felt like I'd done what I could do in Huntley.
Yeah. And
it was time for somebody else to try. And I feel like I took the district to a higher level, and I hope the people now take the district to another higher level, because continuous improvement is really what needs to happen.
Awesome.
But yes, I really enjoy helping our superintendents and helping them deal with some of these issues, dealing with some of the COVID-related issues at the state level. Yeah. But it's been a pleasure to help, not be them.
Yeah.
And it's just been an unbelievably challenging time for all educators. It doesn't matter what job you're in. A superintendent, teacher, para, bus driver, whatever the job is, been an incredibly challenging time for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely can appreciate that, and we hear it a lot. So you said LUDA. I actually teased it a little bit in the intro to this video, but I don't think I go into exactly what it is. So I know what it is because I'm working with you guys, but would you just tell everybody kind of what LUDA is and why you were so passionate about getting into and becoming the new director?
Yeah, so the letters stand for Large Unit District Association, and as you know, Illinois people watching this would know, there's a lot of districts in Illinois.
Yeah.
I think there's 852. So a lot of districts, a lot of really small districts in Illinois. And back in the 70s, there were a group of large district superintendents that got together and said, we need an organization really where we can collaborate around issues specific to large districts, and also to advocate for issues in Springfield that have to do with those large districts. So they started LUDA, and LUDA is you have to have 3,500 students or more and be a pre-K-12 district to be a member of LUDA. And many districts in Illinois are what's called dual districts. They are elementaries are separate from high schools. So even if they're big, they cannot be a part of LUDA. So this organization has gone along for 40 some years, and really a good group. There's 52 districts, and our it's primarily a superintendent organization. Our superintendents know each other really well. We have 3 major conferences a year. Now, since COVID's happened, we as an organization have really become even better and taken advantage of changing during COVID, where we do a lot of virtual events, which connects our people we have districts across the state. So we've been able to connect even more, both in person, but also digitally during the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And our superintendents, again, they have a connection because they have similar jobs. Being a superintendent in a really small district is a very different job. And I will tell you, I don't think it's an easier job. I think it's a very different job.
Sure.
And when you're in a small district as a superintendent, you got to know everything, and because you're doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
When you're in a bigger district, you have people and expertise to help you do things, but you have the larger, you're running a larger organization and trying to move more people in a bigger organization, a bigger bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So the job's just very different, and our superintendents really like sharing and collaborating with each other, because our philosophy among all our people is, ultimately we want to do what's good for kids, and we care about kids everywhere. I mean, a superintendent's job is to care about the kids, and educate the kids in his or her district. Yeah. But we want kids everywhere in Illinois to do well, and everywhere. And so there's really a sense of helping each other out and sharing, hey, here's something that worked really well in one district, and how can we help other districts with this?
Yeah.
It's not like a competition, is what I'm saying.
It's really not.
It's really about a collaboration for the good of the profession, and ultimately it's all about for the good of the kids in our districts.
Yeah, and I can attest to it, because Spotter's been a part of it just for a little while now. We got to go to our first in-person conference in the fall, and it is all about collaboration. There is zero. Nobody has any kind of attitude about we're bigger, we're better. You got none of that. They are very collaborative. I think it's one of the best things I heard at that conference. I think I told you when you guys did the superintendent roundtable and just bouncing ideas off each other and how can we fix this and how can we help this was really cool to see. But one thing I never asked you, this is kind of spurring this question on you, sorry. They are the 50 largest districts, the K through 12 in the state. Do they talk to the not the younger, but the smaller districts to kind of get their influence on what they want? Does that happen?
Yeah, they do. So,
okay.
So it depends on what district it is. We have some suburban areas where there's a lot of LUDA districts right next to each other, and so they collaborate a lot. There are both in the suburbs and certainly out of the suburbs, what we term downstate, where, like I'll use an example, Bloomington Normal.
Yeah.
Bloomington Normal, 2 different districts. Bloomington's one district, 87, Normal's Unit 5, 2 different districts. But they are completely surrounded by small rural communities. And the superintendents in Bloomington and Normal are in organizations where they have county superintendent meetings. They're collaborating on things, definitely collaborating on COVID.
Gotcha.
Collaborate on even things like snow days. Like, are we taking a snow day today? And so they do talk a lot. And in fact, one of the virtual conferences we had during COVID, we let our superintendents invite any other soups they wanted to.
Oh wow!
Just for free to come into this virtual conference, and it was a nice way to get them involved as well. So again, while we're focused obviously on our members, we care about all kids in Illinois.
Yeah,
both as an organization and our individual superintendents.
That's really cool. Yeah, I never asked you that. So, and one other thing that came through is your idea and your push behind innovation is always at the forefront at the conference when I was there with you. You can tell it's there.
We really, as an organization, we do two primary things. We advocate and lobby in Springfield for legislation, and I have to also tell you, in most cases, we're lobbying against bad legislation that we're trying not to get to happen. But then the other whole arm of what we do is the collaboration professional development piece, and we really have forward-thinking superintendents, and you don't get to be the superintendent of a LUDA district unless you've got a really good background.
Yeah.
And so we really try to both have collaboration around that, but also at the state level advance those ideas. And the probably biggest idea we've been involved in the last couple of years is the competency-based pilot.
Okay.
We really believe strongly that is an important way that our schools can change going forward. And Illinois has a pilot that's been in place about 5 years, and I was actually when I was at Huntley, I was one of the original 10 districts that got in the pilot. So I saw it from the superintendent side, and so now we are trying to really both connect those districts, but also we are advancing competency with the state. So we're making sure that those innovations stay on the forefront of the state agenda. In fact, LUDA just published, we called it a white paper. It's really a book, a book that came out that chronicles the story of 7 of our districts in competency and why they got in the pilot, how they designed it, because they all look different. Yeah. And it's a great read because, again, anybody can read it and take out ideas from the successes that districts had, but also in the book, districts talk about the things that didn't go so well. Yeah. Because that's how you learn. You learn from the things that didn't go well. Yeah. And so anytime you're an innovator, anytime you're out in front, there will be challenges. Yeah. There will be things that don't go right. The measure of success isn't does that happen, it's what do you do after it happens. Right. And that's what, with this book, we are just trying to help our districts, but also other districts learn about competency-based education.
I'm smiling because I just had this conversation with my son. This is taken it to obviously a different level, but he's 9, and he came home upset because he got a D on a test the other day. And I said, it's about what you do what'd you do after that? Did you learn from your mistakes? And he said, Dad, that's not how it works. You just got to get a good grade. And I said, I'm going to show him this. I'm like, see, John said this is it's what you do. It's what you learn from it. So that's amazing. Yeah. And that paper's available on the LUDA website, right? Because
it's actually on Amazon.
Oh, it's on Amazon.
So,
okay, cool.
Oh yeah, this is big time. So
big stuff.
So we're officially published on. We're we have hard copies, but the digital version's available on Amazon. And it's just exciting to be a part of all this because I think, and I'm generalizing, and this is on the whole, but schools still look a lot like they did 100 years ago. Yeah. And I think actually a lot of innovation has happened in maybe the last 10, 20 years, but I think that we really need to continue to move forward. And if you went into a classroom in 1921, you would have seen the chalkboards I talked about earlier. You would have seen rows of desks. And if you go into a lot of classrooms today, look the same. Maybe the chalkboard's a whiteboard.
It's a whiteboard, yeah.
But we are starting to see that change. We are, and let me explain, for any non-educators that might be watching, the why it was that way and why it doesn't need to be now. When you were in school 100 years ago, if I was a student in 1921, I needed that teacher to give information to me. I only had two ways to get it, the teacher or a book. Today, in 2021, all the information I learned in school, I can get on my cell phone.
Yeah.
And so I don't need a teacher to impart all of this information to me. Like the history teacher I talked about earlier was giving me history facts because I had to either get them from him or get them from a book.
Yeah.
Today, it's much more about helping kids find information, but the education and the classroom experience is more about teaching kids what to do with that information, because that's how a student becomes a successful adult.
Sure.
It's not just what do you know, it's what can you do with what you know.
Yeah.
And that comes back to why competency is so important. If you get an A in a class and it's a traditional class, it's a pretty good measure of how much you memorized.
Right.
And we're able to spit back to the teacher.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, there are certain things people just need to know. I mean, it's not that all memorization is bad.
Sure.
But that's only a part of education. And what competency is so much more focused on is just what the word says. What can you demonstrate?
Yeah.
What can you do? And a lot of students that historically have gotten good grades in school are really good at doing school.
Yeah.
And that's what the grade demonstrates. They look at the syllabus, they follow the rules, they follow the guidelines, and if you do that, you get an A. Well, that doesn't always mean that you learned a lot.
Right.
And sometimes the kids that don't follow all that, don't get the A's, actually learn a lot in other ways. And that's what education really needs to continue to move to.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one specific story from also from my background is I was never liked math class very much. And again, back to my high school experience, I took Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 in sequence, and I hated algebra. It's like, you're learning the formulas, and you just plug in these numbers. And I actually did pretty well in it because again, I played the game, but I hated it. And I was really fearful about my junior year because it was geometry, and I'm like, oh gosh, because high school students were all like, geometry's awful, you're gonna hate it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, geometry, it's gonna be worse than this. I mean, how could it be worse than algebra? I got in to my junior year geometry class, and I'm like, I love this. Like geometry made sense to me.
Yeah.
And while most of the other students were like, oh, this is so hard, we hate this, it worked for me. And the point in my story is this: if I had been taught math differently earlier on, I think I actually could have really come to have loved math.
Yeah.
Because I did love geometry. I loved doing the proofs and problem solving because it all made sense to me. And so I think that the right teacher and the right method of teaching can in fact make any subject very relatable and very interesting to a student. And in the end of the day, what a good teacher, what good education does is it makes you interested and it makes you want to learn more. Because when you leave school, whether it's at 3 o'clock that afternoon, the summer, or when you graduate, what's important is are you still curious? Do you still want to learn? And do you still know how to learn on your own without a teacher? And that to me is successful education. It's often said, and I really think it's true, that a great majority of the jobs that kids are learning to do today, that are in school today, won't exist 10 years from now.
It's amazing.
And so, and that's how fast our workforce is changing. We need to graduate students, not that know the mechanics of doing certain jobs, but they know how to learn. Because what employers want is they're going to want people who, one, are very literate, can read and write and communicate very well, who can work well in teams with other people, but that can learn. Because the job many of our kids have hasn't even been invented yet.
It's amazing.
So those basic, and it's often termed soft skills, but those both soft skills and the other math literacy skills are so important. Not just that students memorize and know that stuff, but that they can apply that in different situations that they're going to face.
Learn to learn
when they're an adult.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. That's so well said. It's amazing. And I think there are. I'm just speaking as a parent of a fourth grader. I think there's some changes that have happened. They are moving to a learn to learn kind of model, and we're teaching you how to learn. And because I see it, it's different than the way I learned.
There really have been a lot of advances in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think all educators, myself included, we were struggling with how do we use technology. It's like it's there, and as I said earlier, I use laptop cards back at its infancy. I would do it differently today than I did it then, but I wouldn't know that if I hadn't done it that way.
You learned that.
So I learned from that.
Yeah.
And so I think all the districts that went 1-to-1, it's not that it was the magic answer to anything. It wasn't. But I think districts are learning from those things, and I do think technology can be a great tool to make learning better if it's done right. That being said, I think the human interaction, both student to student and student to teacher, is a critical part of pre-K-12 education.
Yeah.
And I think it always needs to be. So I think it's how do we find the right blend of using technology, but truly keeping the human element in it. And I think many of our schools are finding how to do that.
Which I think maybe, and I know I don't want to keep dragging you into this conversation, but you're just saying so many things that are interesting. If COVID, if there was a positive, it advanced that technical aspect of it. But I think that's what we all saw was we lost this human element, which we then figured out, we really need that. We need to have both, right?
One of the things that concerns me out of COVID and remote learning is remote learning has gotten a really bad rap now. And there are people, policymakers, and this is again what I deal with, that'll say, we have to have 100% in-person school. We're never going back to that. Well, here's the problem with that, is the remote learning we did during COVID, certainly at the beginning, certainly in the first months of COVID, of course it wasn't good remote learning. Nobody was set up for that. And schools were doing the best they could in an emergency situation. So you can't judge remote learning by what happened in that emergency situation. And that concerns me not because I think kids should go to 100% remote learning. I don't. But I do think there are kids that will benefit from remote learning, even if it's not 100%. It might be for one class, it might be during a certain time of the year. And I don't want us, we often have this pendulum swing in education where we got to be at one extreme or the other. And it's where, everybody's got to be remote and virtual, or everybody's got to be in person. And the reality is, we got to find that sweet spot. And that sweet spot will be different for different kids, will be different for different classes, and flexibility really is the key.
That's the sweet spot.
It really is,
because they learn differently.
It really is. And I have two kids, and one of my kids, and I'm the guy who started blended learning, and I'm the biggest advocate of it. But you know what? When he got into high school, wasn't right for him. He would not do well in blended learning because he needed the structure of having a teacher with him 7 hours a day. My daughter totally can operate in more of that environment. And so it's not that blended learning is good, bad. It's not that one kid's good. The point is, my kids need different things. So every child needs something different.
Class is so many of kids.
There's some kids that just completely were not successful during the pandemic, and it's really a tragedy what's happened to some kids that were just completely not connected, both and are struggling both academically and social emotionally.
Yeah.
But also, we have to recognize there are kids that did do really well in that environment, and so we have to again take the best of what we learn, but not just
don't throw
say
it
all didn't work. And I do hear that said a lot, is that it got such a bad rap that we can never do that again. So.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's amazing. So you talked a little about your kids. What do you guys like to do outside? I know you just got back from Hawaii, so I want to talk a little bit about, just real quick, what do you guys like to do outside of education? What do you do?
So I have two kids actually that are big tennis players. So
that's right. Yeah.
My son actually he plays tennis in college at our junior college, and he's a kid who loves all sports. So he wanted to play football. He did play basketball.
Yeah.
And when he got to high school, it was interesting because he's a natural athlete, but he was not a kid that was going to like be on the A basketball team in high school. And so I told him, I said, and he played tennis for fun when he was littler. So I said, you can play basketball in high school and you can sit on the bench on the B team. Or he had a lot of talent in tennis. I said, or you can play tennis and be on the varsity tennis team.
Yeah.
And so he did go the tennis route. He was a varsity tennis player all 4 years. And now is playing at MCC and absolutely loves it. Our daughter's a freshman in high school, and she played on the varsity team this fall as well. And so they really love it, and it's been so we spend a lot of time with watching them at meets, and tennis is just a fun sport to watch. My kids actually, before tennis, when they were much younger, they were swimmers. And this is the way I can describe swimming. It is a great sport for the swimmer. It is a terrible sport for the parents. so
my brother's a good swimmer. Yeah,
it's a great. I loved that my kids were swimmers. Yeah. And it was, from a physical standpoint, you can't get a better sport.
Oh, it's just amazing.
It was great at developing them, physically and their endurance. But as a parent, you sit for hours and hours and hours, and it's hot and it's humid, and you watch your kids swim for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it was a hard parent sport. Yeah. So at least for me.
Yeah.
So I was very thankful because I enjoy going.
I was a track runner. My mom said the same thing. She's like, I'm here for 3 hours. I watch you for this.
Track's the same.
Yeah.
The same thing. So,
I get it.
So and like you mentioned, we do like to travel. We always have. That's something that we've done as a family, and that's kind of our way to basically spend more time together traveling, because you don't have all the other distractions of events going on and all that. So we've exposed our kids to that really at a very young age, and have taken them really all over the world, and it's been really fun to do that.
That's great. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
We went over time, didn't we?
Oh, it's totally fine.
This is gonna be like a 2-part episode?
We might do part 1 and part 2. Who knows where we're gonna go? Right. Yeah. We might put it in 3 parts.
It could be a mini-series. There you go.
I always like to end these, if you just quickly look into the camera and say, give 1 minute of advice of anybody and for you, your path was you went into administration pretty quickly. If someone wants to do that, is there, tips that you would give them and why they should go into this profession?
So I think that it is a great profession. I think it is an incredibly challenging time to go into it. One of my concerns about the profession, and I raise this in the policy venues I'm at, where if I can have any influence, is teaching needs to change as a profession, because people that are getting out of college today want something different from work than what people did even in my generation. And being in a room, or being in a classroom for say 6-7 hours and not having any flexibility about your schedule, your etc., that is not going to be as attractive to 22-year-olds today as it was back 30 years ago when I did it. And I think we have to recognize that not only has all the changes I talked about earlier for kids are they important, I think the profession has to change, because we have to continue to attract good people in the future.
Awesome.
And so with that, can I?
You got it. Those are all yours. Yeah.
So here's the. Let's start with the Christmas.
That's where you're gonna go. The glazed one. Love it.
So Ryan, it's great to
good to do this. Thank you so much, and obviously we look forward to working with you and LUDA in the future.
Thanks.
All right. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Same to you.